Hello, all my fellow foreign English speakers out there. Today, I'll touch upon a subject of a grammatical nature, namely English adverbs and their comparative and superlative forms. I'm not a grammar freak, and neither do I expect you to be one. So let me remind you of these adverb forms so that you have a clear idea of what we're talking about here. Let's take an adverb great. Its comparative form is greater. It's used when you compare two things and describe one as being greater than the other. But its superlative form is greatest, which is often preceded by the definite article the, as in, you're the greatest man I've ever known. So far, so good, right? And I guess you also know the rule of thumb that adverbs consisting of two syllables and more get their comparative and superlative forms by adding words more and most. Well, of course you know it all, because after all, this whole English omni thing is for those whose overall English is decent, and you only want to improve your spoken fluency and deal with your confidence issues. Isn't that right? Anyway, here's a couple of English adverb-related problems even an advanced foreigner might run into when having a conversation with others. Let's say, for example, you want to describe something during a conversation, but your mind keeps going back to the tables in your English grammar textbook where irregular adverbs were listed. It may happen completely involuntarily, but it's this traditional way of structuring adverbs according to their forms that makes you analyze the structure of a sentence instead of being fully engaged into the conversation. That in turn may result in all sorts of English fluency issues. You may be brilliant at describing and comparing objects, living creatures and people, but if you only stick with the traditional system, adverb, comparative adverb, superlative adverb, will limit your spoken English development. For example, in a sentence, she's really resourceful in the way she solves practical problems compared to her sister. The word resourceful isn't a comparative form of some other adverb. But if your mind is tuned to the standard way of using adverbs, you may find that you just can't see past the standard way of using the same adverb you would have already described her sister with. So let's say, for example, you describe her sister as not being practical. So if you go down the traditional adverb comparison road, you automatically may say she's more practical than her sister. It's not a bad thing in itself, of course. Don't get me wrong. It's just that on certain occasions, it may limit your ability to speak freely and improvise. So how do you develop your ability to speak automatically and without analyzing too much if you've got this or that particular adverb form? Watch the rest of this video and find out how. The difference between comparing and describing might seem insignificant at first, but look at the following example first, and then you might just change your mind. Let's say you're telling your friends a funny story, and you want to describe a certain situation when you felt even more embarrassed than on a similar occasion previously. You may stick to the trodden path and organize your speech around the word embarrassed. I was even more embarrassed than before. It was the most embarrassing moment I've ever experienced. It's all nice and well, but now look at what happens when you stop going by the grammar book and do away with the comparison. The situation was quite awkward, and right there and then I was ashamed of being his friend. It was simply mortifying, and I wished the earth would swallow me up. Now, do you see what happens when you let your mind roam free and don't stick to the same old comparison? When you describe a situation, and forget about just that one word, in this case, embarrassed, all of a sudden you become more creative in terms of your vocabulary. It definitely helps to open up your fluency and avoid making mistakes when speaking in English. If you approach every situation you're in just as it is. Say, for example, you've seen something shocking on TV and you want to tell your friend that today's news is really bad. Now, if you're used to analyzing your speech and preparing it in your head beforehand, you may run into slight fluency issues when picking the right adverb, which in this case is bad. You may be going by the irregular adverb table in which the comparative form of bad is worse, and before you know it, you may start a sentence with the following words: today's news is worse, after which you have to hesitate a little if you didn't really actually mean to compare today's news with anything. You're much better off approaching every situation on its own and expressing how you feel about today's news. Did they shock you? Then say it. Today's news is shocking. Or today's news is terrible. Basically, what I wanted to tell you in this Practical English Grammar video episode is that you don't necessarily have to use the comparative and superlative adverb forms. Improvise. You may find that you are capable of speaking more freely and fluently than before. Also, if your English vocabulary needs to be spruced up a little, thinking beyond the adverb forms is a great way of forcing yourself into looking up new adverbs which describe the situation more precisely. But of course, my fellow foreigners, I'm not saying you need to forget about the comparative and superlative adverb forms. Of course, you'll be using them an awful lot. It's just that sometimes you may think outside the box, and it will definitely improve your spoken English. There is no doubt about that. Did you enjoy this video? Are you interested in improving your spoken English and learning to speak English fluently? Then check out these relevant videos about different aspects of practical English grammar. And also, don't forget to subscribe to my YouTube channel to get notified when I publish new video episodes.